His IQ for music is just astronomical. And I think I've listened to some of his songs, and I don't think, I mean, I know Spanish, I speak Spanish, I know what he's talking about. Nothing really jumps out at me. So when I see statements like this, I'm like, what am I missing about this guy, right? And then there's another one that says here, even if you don't understand the Spanish lyrics, the very sound of his voice is appealing. Like, again, I think, really? Like, in what way? I listen to him, and it's just like his voice sounds so annoying to me. All right, welcome to the Brown Perspective. Today we have a really exciting show for you guys. We're going to break down why Bad Bunny has become the most streamed artist in Spotify. And this made the headlines last week. This guy came out of nowhere, meteoric rise, and all of a sudden he's beating out other artists like Drake, Maluma, and J Balvin.
Woo! Bad Bunny, baby, Bad Bunny.
Anyway, I gotta say, look, when it comes to reggaeton, I enjoy the music, but I'm just not as familiar with it as you are. And so if you ask me, I don't really understand how it is that Bud Bunny is number one. I'm not a fan, really. I actually think there's other artists, other reggaetoneros that are better than him. So even if I understand music is very subjective, even just within reggaeton in the last 10 years, the artists that have come out, I feel like there's just more lyrical talent, delivery. I find artists like Maluma or J Balvin a lot better. So maybe you could break down to me or to all of us that people out there that feel the same way that I do, some of the reasons why I just don't know what I'm talking about. And Bad Bunny is the number one stream artist, right? Rightfully so.
Yeah. Well, here in the Brown Perspective, we're a judgment-free zone, where I guess we judge, but we also educate. So don't feel bad. I think that it's funny because, well, first of all, I think we can say that Bad Bunny is not only reggaetonero, he's trapero, and I think those are his origins. So in some ways, he's the representation of of the new generation of the what's after reggaeton and hip hop in a way. And it's funny because for me, while I love me my J Baldwin, I love me my Luma baby. I want to be in vacaciones in Hawaii. But I think that musically and artistically, in so many ways, Bad Bunny is better. So, and
Okay.
that's my opinion,
Okay. Let's just
and
give
I can
some.
tell you why.
Yeah, let's give some stats here before we get to the top five. So he was the leading artist with more than 8.3 billion streams, and he edged out Drake, second place, and then J Balvin was in third. And he also edged out The Weeknd. And this is actually quite an accomplishment considering that Bad Bunny didn't enter the stage until what, like 4 or 5 years ago? Is that,
Yeah, it
am
hasn't
I
been that
right?
long.
And others like Drake, The Weeknd, they've been staples. They've been around for a long time. So here's this other article from the Guardian, and they're also talking about his meteoric rise. And I see statements such as this one: his IQ for music is just astronomical. And I think I've listened to some of his songs, and I don't think, I mean, I know Spanish, I speak Spanish, I know what he's talking about. Nothing really jumps out at me. So when I see statements like this, I'm like, what am I missing about this guy, right? And then there's another one that says here, even if you don't understand the Spanish lyrics, the very sound of his voice is appealing. Like, again, I think, really? Like, in what way? I listen to him, and it's just like his voice sounds so annoying to me. Just the style, really. But again, look, I'm just saying it's me, right? So I understand that other
Yeah.
people may like that style, but it's just, to me, it's like I don't understand how his voice, how someone with that style. But maybe that's what it is. Maybe he's just unique and different, right? So why don't you break it down for us? What am I
It's
missing with
funny
this guy?
because how you feel is how I feel about Luis Miguel. I never knew. I never knew what was the big deal about Luis Miguel and why everybody, and particularly the girls, the women, love them. But in any case, let's focus on Bad Bunny. I think let's start there. I think it starts with the music. So he, reggaeton beginnings, but really trapero. And for those folks who maybe don't know the difference between trap and hip hop, basically, in some ways it's the mumble rap. It's kind of like the evolution, and what happened with Bad Bunny actually is that he pretty quickly translated trap or made Spanish trap.
Hmm.
And he did that by being on YouTube, by being very creative. So the fact that he's where he is just a demonstration of how hard he has worked and how talented he is. But with the music, so let's start there. So he's not afraid to experiment. So throughout his music, he has some amazing um, reggaeton, and actually in some ways taking reggaeton back to his roots. So you have like a song like Zafaera that is just like a, you know, bad words, great beats, and just a great time. So he's able to go from that Zafaera energy, um, kind of like you're just in the club having a good time. You're feeling a little tipsy. You're about to walk in the club. The music, the lights are going. Boom,
So that's
boom.
the number one reason then. He experiments, he's not afraid to push boundaries. And
Yeah.
you're
So he's added other genres. So
so this
like for
song
instance,
so this song Sapphire that you just played, you're playing it in the background. It sounds like your typical reggaeton song to me. What's so good about
yes.
it?
Well, it's a typical reggaeton song, but the thing is, like in some ways, it's old school reggaeton with some modern touches and some modern beats and some
Hmm.
modern artists. So these are the guys that were influenced by Daddy Yankee, Tego Calderon, Nicky Jam. So this is the new generation. So in some ways, they are able to kind of bring the essence of reggaeton back. So
Okay.
that's one of the things. So and I know right now it's in the slow part of the song, but once the beat drops, which is right here. Hoy se fuma, hoy se bebe, hoy se gasta.
Okay.
Y lo que hace is he takes again the genre back to the root of reggaeton, and but in between then this album
Hmm.
and where we are now, he's also now added his newest record, and that's one of the other reasons that he's been so streamed is that he's has been one of the most prolific songwriters of this year. He released 3 albums in 2020, and his new album is more about you can hear the rock elements that he brings to that song.
Yeah, I just want
So
to.
it
I
kind
want
of
to.
shows the range.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm following along though, because I want to keep track of the top five reasons. So we said number one was he's edgy, he experiments, and you're saying he's mixing some of these old elements with the new and
And also other genres.
other genres, right? And
Yeah.
did you go to number two now?
So yeah, so I think the that one builds into the number two that or yeah, number two, which is his style and his message is reaching a larger audience. So part of it is like the music, how he's able to combine those things, and how lyrical he is. So he's a brilliant lyricist.
Okay,
So within those
yeah.
messages,
Do you
go
have
ahead. You
like
have a
an
question.
example? Do you have example lyrics? Because the previous one you just played, he's saying "Oise fuma, oise rasta," which is there's really nothing that stands out about that because that's just your typical club music that you would get, the type of attitude or style that you would get from hip hop, like urban style. Today we drink, today we smoke, today we party. That's really
Yeah.
what he's saying, right? So there's really okay, fine. That's typical club song. Do you have example of like some lyrics where we can say, okay, this guy is really moving beyond that or giving us some really good lyrics that make him stand out from the pack?
Yes, sir. I think if you go to and look for Compositor del Año,
Ajá, compositor.
this is actually another song that came out this year, and it came out as a result of a few weeks, probably a few months after what was happening after the death of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. So he got criticized for being one of the artists that was silenced, that wasn't saying anything. So then he came up with this sort of response. So great beat. I mean, when you see the video, it's trippy because he also makes a tribute to I believe is Little Richie, and he introduces some like old school like rock and roll in the beat. And within the song, he acknowledges how Little Richard is greater than Elvis.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a part there where he talks about, Black Lives Matter, talks about Kobe, and then a few more. Yeah, so then you see that, en el 12-12, racismo es peor que el COVID, un
Mm-hmm.
negro con pistola, y eso es un criminal, pero un blanquito se la engancha y dicen que es un hobby.
Yeah. Okay. So this is better. This is what you would hear from. You're not really okay. You're hearing this from hip hop. Don't get me wrong. So if you
Yeah.
look at Childish Gambino's "This Is America," right?
Yeah. And
So
he's at, I think Bad Bunny and Childish Gambino are at that level. They're just tremendous artists. Like they're not only artists in the sense they're challenge you with the lyrics, with the presentation, with what they're saying, and
mhm.
their attitude as well,
Okay.
and how they're
So
they're expanding boundaries. So just in this estrofa, so you see, obviously Black Lives Matter, that tells it all, or que en paz descanse in paz descanse Kobe,
mhm.
acknowledging the Kobe. He's a big basketball fan, and he's one of the reasons that he also got popular was because he got invited to, I believe it was last year, he was at the NBA All Stars game and he was having a ball. 2020 y el racismo es peor que el COVID. 2020 and racism is worse than COVID. So right there, acknowledging everything that's happening this year in one freaking line. Un negro con pistola y es un criminal. A black person with a pistol or a gun and he's a criminal. Pero un blanquito se la engancha y dice que es un hobby. But a little white kid straps one on and they say is a hobby. And that makes reference to the young man who killed protesters up in Wisconsin.
Mhm.
And, he got a very different
Yeah,
treatment.
Kyle
So just in
Rittenhouse.
that little paragraph, he addresses so much.
Okay, so these lyrics are definitely more loaded, and I can see how they would be more controversial. So this would be part of his appeal, and especially because no other artist, mainstream artist, especially reggaetonero or trap reggaeton, is not talking about any of this. But certainly Bad Bunny is not the first, right? Even
No,
your
he's not.
the some of the greats of reggaeton that you've talked about before, like Tego Calderon, were always plugged into the streets, into the struggle. So they would have been talking about things like this, right?
Yeah, and Residente, right? And that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like he's not the best, but he has one of the biggest platforms. And this brings me to the other point that
Okay.
he has done some
So that's
amazing
number three.
collaborations.
So
So
we're
another collaboration that dropped this year was Bellacoso between him and Residente, and it was an amazing song. It was a happy song. It was a song that was released after Bad Bunny, Residente, not Mark Anthony, Ricky Martin helped organize the people and helped kicked out the Rosselló administration.
mm-hmm.
So
So
he's also collaborated with Drake, J Balvin, Rosalia, Dua Lipa, and so many. So
so
part of his ability is to be able to collaborate with some of the poppiest people like Dua Lipa and J Balvin, and at the same time be able to collaborate with someone who's deep like Residente, uh, who is amazing.
so that's number three then. The his ability to work well and collaborate with others. That sounds like the objective in a resume when you're trying to get a job.
That's right.
Here it is, Bad Bunny putting it to practice. That it takes you places when you can do that.
Yeah, and in this case, the people who are hiring him is the audience, which
Yeah.
brings me to my
So
other point,
number four.
my fourth point, which is again that he is reaching news audiences because of his message and also the evolution of his message. So, when he first came out, very like unapologetically from the streets or wanting to be from the streets, Latino, having a good time, you know, sex, rock and roll, and women, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So that song that he did, Chambea, which was kind of one of his original trap songs, Chambea, which featured what's his name, Ric Flair. So that we've talked about that show before, that song before. So that was him unapologetically. That's who he is. But then you also started noticing that he painted his nails, that he was doing other things to challenge a very homophobic, misogynist culture that's reggaeton, and he also did that. But a lot of the songs that he writes, some of the songs that are about the women's perspective, right? They feature women more, but they also talk about domestic violence, talks about broken families with Bete, and he does it in a way that is poetic to the point, but at the same time he's comfortable in his sexuality. He's challenging people on theirs, on being more open. He famously did Perrea Sola as a where he became a transgender, right? So he put on boobies. He actually looks kind of cute. So if I see Bad Bunny,
He better watch
uh,
out.
Perrea
Le
Sola,
vas a soltar juego.
suelta como gavete. Pero so there's that. So through that message, so he's reaching to trans people. I know he one of his political messages that he did in the Jimmy Fallon show was highlighting a Puerto Rican trans woman or trans person who was killed and murdered in Puerto Rico. So in some ways, he's challenging not only their genre's perceptions, but also the society's perceptions around these issues, and obviously race relations as well.
So this one is actually the one that I would have thought you would have said as number one. That he's not easy to classify. That he really does cross into other genres and styles of fashion, especially that, and him dressing up in Yo Perreo Sola and then painting his nails, like you said. So that's the one thing that I have known about him.
Yeah.
I would have thought that he's probably getting a lot of attention just because there's some controversy in his style and he's unapologetic with it. So, but he's also not the first, right? So if I think about like cross dressing and others being
Within reggaeton, though.
yeah, exactly. That's what I was about to say. That
Okay.
you've seen it in other genres. Like you go back to the '80s with Prince, '80s and '90s with David Bowie. But I feel like so he's the first guy that came along and took what was already a global phenomenon with this reggaeton and then trap reggaeton. It was already huge. So then he comes along and then he brings in all these other elements that were not present in it. So then that's also giving him a boost.
Correct.
And
You nailed it.
what's the fifth one?
So the fifth one is that the fact that he's been a prolific songwriter. So this year he released 3 albums. Yo hago lo que me dé la gana, las que no iban a salir, and then the last one. Oh my God, and the name escapes me. But he has some really good. He's put out 3 albums. So I mean, he's taken full advantage of the quarantine and been able to focus on on doing on doing his work. And not only that, he also had the time to do some deals with Crocs and Adidas, who are now going to be having his selling his shoes.
That's, and and if we just focus also then on the on his actual style. So his okay, so we saw some of his lyrics. We know that he likes to get political, which is good because he has a platform, so he's using it for a good cause. What about in terms of just though his style, like his actual voice and his delivery? Surely what I said earlier, which is I feel that there's other artists that are a lot better than he is in that aspect. Do you also think that his flow and his delivery is like top notch, is the best at the moment?
Yes, it's up there. It definitely is. I think the delivery and the ability. So I think the other song that I'll be remiss not to mention would be Te Bote. I think that's one of the
That's
collaborations
a
that put
remix,
him
right?
on the map. Yeah, the remix. So the way that that the fact that he's like the second art after Osuna opens it up, there's that second that he's the second one, and that's the best one of the best parts of the song. So that's where song reaches its climax. That's like you play that part and then you don't have to play the rest of the song because that's what people love. So he did an amazing job there.
I
But
heard
so
that's
again, so the
yeah. Go ahead.
style, yeah. So his style was like unapologetic reggaetonero, and then again he started painting his nails, doing this, and I remember he went to an award with a third eye. He actually painted or stuck a third eye,
Mm-hmm.
and he went to an award show like that. So again, just kind of challenging the culture, being himself. And then, but I think he also has that style that's it could be anything, right? He can be very hip hop, reggaetonero. He could also be some in his new album, El Último Tour del Mundo. Ya lo me acordé. It's more like a rocker vibe. So he can also be a rocker and dress like rocker style too, or he can be dressed like a normal, middle class Puerto Rican kid or Latin American kid.
Okay, so I can understand some of the previous points that we covered about him. The one that that is hard for me to see is that his delivery and that he actually has a good style because it's just personally it's not for
Mm.
me. And
Mm.
but I have a
What is it
problem.
that you don't like?
So in general, there's a lot of autotune. I don't think Bad Bunny uses autotune as much as someone like Osuna.
Hmm.
I'm also not a big fan of trap music in general. So it's just look, this type of music is just not for me. So that's why I was trying to understand what it is
Hmm.
that is so appealing. I can see the other aspects of it outside of his artistic talent. So artistically, his delivery, and I would have to go back and to see some of the lyrics to see what kind of lyrics he's writing beyond the one that you showed me. But that one
Hmm.
that you showed me was pretty good about Kobe and COVID and George Floyd. But just his style, I'm just not a fan of the way he sings or he tries to sing, and his delivery. I actually find the voice really annoying.
Mm.
And just for me, listening to reggaeton when it is playing on the radio, I think that like J Balvin has way better flow. And again, very subjective, right? But J Balvin
No.
is rapping or singing about a very specific topic. He doesn't really branch out as much as Bad Bunny does. But I after talking to you about this, I can see why Bad Bunny would have a bigger presence in general, just because of everything else that comes along with him, the baggage, the controversy, the personas, the showmanship, so all of that. So I can start to see why he is the one of the most or the most streamed artist in Spotify. And the other one that I read and it's this one, it's in this article in the Guardian, is that this also shows just how important Latin America is becoming to the streaming industry,
Hmm.
because this is about access now. Because before, you had the Billboard charts and you had artists that were always topping the charts, but you've never had streaming where the entire world has access to music now. And now they can start, now that they're measuring patterns, streaming patterns, there's this whole continent that has been overlooked in terms of those charts for a long time. So now these charts are now telling us that there's a lot of demand for music coming out of Latin
Yeah.
America, and Latin America is in a way setting the charts by making artists like Bad Bunny the top streamed artist.
Yes, that's a great point, and thank you for making that point because it's so important, and I feel in some ways the Latin American music market has been seen as a second tier market where it shouldn't be, and in some ways, it's to your point, is leading a lot of the great music being produced here in the American continent, and one of the reasons why. And it's been a progression, right? So kind of reggaeton had a part of that, salsa had a part of that, uh, uh, merengue had a part of that. Like what constitutes Latin music, rock en español has a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think of so many artists within reggaeton, Nicky Jam going to Colombia, and then J Balvin making it out of Colombia to the United States, and then globally. And then when you think of artists like Anita down in Brazil, there's a lot more artists coming from Argentina as well within rap. So it's funny because you have white-looking Latinos rapping and looking and being traperos. And so all that to say that yes, that I think that the world is finally seeing the sort of the musical contributions of Latin America. And let's not forget about Despacito. You know, Despacito, Luis Fonsi, Daddy Yankee. I mean,
Hmm.
that song sort of transformed the world. So there's that, and the fact that we also are an important a market base, and only if we could all unite as
Yeah.
one union and hacer el sueño de Bolívar posible. We still can, and I think Trap and Bad Bunny is going to help us get us there.
Ooh, that's a leap that you took.
He's laying the political groundwork. Well, he and
Yeah.
Residente with Latino America. That was the first Pan American anthem that's going to get us to a greater consciousness.
Hey man, I'll never criticize you for being an optimist, even if it's bridging that wide gap between jumping from something like Bad Bunny to fulfilling Bolivar's dream. Um, the other thing with, at least with the way that I enjoy music, is again it's all subjective. So I understand that reggaeton, that there's a lot of people that feel it in a different way than I do. But I think what I would like to see from reggaeton and from trap, you said it's called trap reggaeton or trap en español. What's the
Uh, yeah, Spanish Trap.
Spanish trap? You know what I'd like to see is I'd like to see those songs made acoustic. Get rid of the auto tune, all of the electronic sounds, and just come down with some actual instruments. Make the beat just the beat with the drums,
Oh
and
man, you need to after this, I want to show you another
well,
Bad Bunny collaboration that
y-
gets into what you're trying to
you
say.
know what I'm saying is the Despacito song does this at the end of Despacito when they're just jamming out and they're in
Oh
a room
yeah,
and they're just playing acoustic. So see, if I think if some of these reggaetoneros played like that, I think I'd be a bigger fan, because then I could just you could strip all that down to just the music, and I could hear
yeah.
the beats. I can hear them either rapping or singing. It would probably sound a lot better to me. It's just I'm just not a fan again even of trap in English, just because it sounds very mumbo jumbo and it sounds very generic, to be honest, to me. But then again, it's just that's just my style, right? So I'm not digging at other people's style on this.
So I think you're right, and one of the reasons, and I appreciate that, and I agree with you that when you appreciate percussion music, like traditional Puerto Rican, Dominican, Colombian, Afro music, like when you appreciate that music, is amazing. And one of the advantages that Puerto Rican artists, and probably one of the reasons that I think I personally believe they're so talented musicians, is that they, and also Cubans, they're at the ground level where that African music, traditional music, is still strong. And many of these artists, they grew up all their lives
Hmm.
loving that music, loving bomba y plena, loving salsa, and taking in all those rich sounds, and then also the lyrics. In some ways, I love when Bad Bunny oftentimes quotes like a old school salsero, or like a
Hmm.
line from old salsa song, because it kind of tells you that how much he appreciates his Puerto Rican musical heritage. But I think the one song that I wanted to point it out, he did this. There's this group, Los Rivera
Hmm.
Destino, and they have a song with Bad Bunny called La Flor,
Okay.
that is basically a slow. It's really good. It basically, well, I'm not gonna ruin it. But he has this. It's very bolero. It sounds like bolero, which bolero music was also big in the Caribbean,
Yep.
in Puerto Rico, Cuba, and all that stuff. But then these guys, Los Rivera, they do a remix of Te Boté, but like acoustic in the way that they do it. So singing the lyrics, and then it definitely adds a different appreciation for what the song is about.
Yeah. So that should be next on Bad Bunny's agenda, to drop a an all acoustic trap album. I think I'd listen.
He could. He's talented enough to be able to do it. And he some of his other songs, his romanticones songs, is that song where he's just him and the piano, where you can just feel the emotion of his song, of his heartbreak.
Órale, pues. All right, man. Well, thanks a lot again for breaking it down for me. I think next time I listen to Bad Bunny, I'll probably listen to it or enjoy it in a different way. I'll take in everything that you said, and it'll probably be lead to a richer listening experience. So
You just don't listen to Bad Bunny. You gotta feel it. You gotta feel it, Reo.
you got to be at the club then. All right. All right. So let's wrap this one up. To listeners, if you like what you're listening to, don't forget to subscribe. We are on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram at The Brown Perspective. Nos vemos.
Ciao.